guys, we're back down in the home theater room. As you can see, our COVID restrictions locally are still in full effect. I have a little bit of an upgrade to perform today, so I figure I'd take this time and talk a little bit about my experiences with my entry-level turntable. Now I have the Music Hall MMF 2.2 turntable paired with a Tavish Design vintage phono preamp. I assembled this preamp from the bare circuit boards. You can see it in my previous video. It uses 6 SL7 GT tubes to amplify the signal coming from the moving magnet cartridge, which is then passed to the XMC1. The XMC1 is run in reference stereo mode. I find that's the mode that sounds the best for my turntable. What that means is the XMC1 does no DSP, no processing of the signal whatsoever. It's just passed to the volume control and then out to the amplifier. So the front tower speakers see a full range, unprocessed signal, essentially directly from the preamp. So a quick rundown of the Music Hall 2.2. It is a belt-driven turntable with an aluminum platter, a project labeled toner arm, it's an aluminum toner arm, and a Music Hall Magic 2 cartridge. From what I can tell, it looks to be just a rebranded OM cartridge by Ortofon. The only difference is that cartridge is typically paired with the 5E Stylus. This one has the 10 Stylus, which is a nice upgrade. So I purchased this turntable 4 years ago and paid just under $300 for it. I took a quick look around and the prices on these have gone up quite a bit. I had a little bit of trouble finding a comparable turntable. The Music Hall 2.3, which looks very similar to this, the toner arm is very, very similar. The only difference seems to be they have changed the cartridge out to an Audio-Technica cartridge, but that's starting around $450. The other one that looks similar is the Project T1, I believe. It has a different toner arm, but the OM cartridge on it. However, it doesn't have the 10 Stylus. It has the 5E Stylus, and even that is over $300, $320 now. So yeah, it's prices have definitely gone up. So a bit of history on how I ended up with this specific turntable. Back in the day when we were planning out this space and finishing off the basement, first question I had to answer was I even going to bother with vinyl down here? I had a handful of albums, and really my only experience was with a late 80s lower end Techniques turntable, and it sounded like a mid-80s lower-end Techniques turntable. It sounded awful. And so was I going to bother investing any money or just roll that into a good DAC or spend more on the amp and the processor? I eventually decided, yeah, I will invest in some vinyl equipment. I mean, there's so many manufacturers out there, so many different preamps out there. There's got to be something to it. So I figured, yeah, I'll put some money towards a turntable and a preamp. When I initially purchased the XMC1, I received a 10% discount on other Emotiva products, so I bought the 7-channel amp, and I also bought the XPS one, their phono preamp, and then started watching the turntables to see when one came for sale. I had a short list, all in about the $250 to $300 range. The Music Hall 2.2 was the first one that went on sale. I think it went 15 or 20% off, so I bought it. Now I know there's probably a few audiophiles out there who cringe at the idea of not being able to audition equipment and buying something because it's on sale, but in my area I have a hard enough time auditioning floor standing speakers, so there's literally no chance of me being able to hear a turntable before I buy it, and the reviews seem to be pretty good, so I took a chance and ended up with the 2.2. Now eventually I swapped out the Emotiva preamp for a Tavish Designs vintage phono preamp. It's not vintage because of the age, that's just the name. Like I said, it uses the 6 SL7 GT tubes. These are the tongue saw tubes for amplifying the moving magnet section. Did it for a couple of reasons. Wanted to hear the tube sound and get the tube experience, but the main reason was I could buy the bare circuit board, and it just seemed like a fun electronics project to assemble. So that was kind of the main reason. Turns out it sounds great, and I still have the Emotiva preamp, so I am planning, when I have a little bit of time, to do a blind listening test between the solid state Emotiva preamp and the all tube vintage phono preamp. That'd be a fun project. Just have to find the time to do it. Now I'm under no illusions as to what this is. This is a $300 turntable, and in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty low on the list. There are a few models beneath it, but not that many. And when you're talking about vinyl, the sky's the limit in terms of prices. A lot of people, a lot of reviewers think that an entry-level turntable is $600 to $1,000. I don't think that's the price range for an entry-level turntable. I was willing to spend $300, and I ended up with the 2.2. Now for the price, I can honestly say I'm completely happy with this unit. I've had it for about 4 years now. I've had absolutely no trouble with it. It arrived from the factory, well packed, no imperfections or blemishes on the finish. Looks great. Took me about a half an hour to set it up. First thing was to level it. Pick yourself up a level. Make sure it's large enough so that it's useful beyond just setting up your turntable. After that, easy instructions to adjust the tracking force. Pick up a brush for your vinyl and either a Stylus brush, or I have the Zero Dust Stylus cleaner. Works very well. The one upgrade I did do fairly quickly was to replace the thin felt pad that came with the unit with a leather pad. The felt pad has a tendency of building up a lot of static electricity, and in a room like this with carpet all over, something I wanted to avoid. Remember, you've got a moving magnet which is inducing small currents in coils. That's what's generating your sound, and it's always a good idea to keep static electricity away from that whole setup. The other upgrade that is available is to replace the aluminum platter with an acrylic platter. It's quite an expensive upgrade, and I'm still not convinced that it's going to make a big difference in the sound quality. Alright, before we get into how it sounds, let me just say first of all that these are all going to be my own opinions. I have no measuring equipment down here, no way to validate or quantify what I'm saying. Just my own personal opinion about what I hear coming out of this turntable. My previous experience, like I said, was with an old Technics turntable, which sounded very mediocre, so the bar is set pretty low. I've also never been very good at describing audio. A lot of the adjectives people use to describe the music that they're listening to really don't make much sense to me. I'll try my best, but I'll keep it short at the same time. So the first thing I noticed when I had everything hooked up, dropped the needle for the first time, is that the background record noise was a lot lower than with my old turntable. I regularly clean the records, and before playing them, dust them off with the brush, clean the stylus. Even still, you always have some background noise, but with this turntable, it seemed to be very, very low when the music started. The best way I can describe it was very lively. It's probably not the best description. It really did sound more like a live concert, and couple anecdotes that I have. You take them for what they're worth, but I did have the opportunity in the past few years to see live performances of bands that I had vinyl albums with. These were, Canadian folk music, folk artists. Not that it's the only thing I listen to, but the nice thing about that was the recorded tracks are very similar to their live performances. During the live performances, I took the time to really listen and try and remember as best I could the levels and just the general feel of the performance. Came home, put the record on, and I was surprised at how well everything came out. The levels, the balance was very close. The vocals were just really present in the room is probably the best way to describe it. Another good test that I found for this whole setup was a Canadian folk artist by the name of Stephen Fearing put out an album where he recorded it entirely in an analog studio with no processing to the sound. They basically recorded it on reel-to-reel tape and then pressed it on vinyl. When you play this album on this turntable, I could swear he was sitting in the room with me. It was quite impressive, and again, for $300, it's hard to beat for that money. Now, this turntable is by no means perfect. One of the biggest areas that it struggles with is music that has a lot of layers to it. If there's a lot going on in a track, I find the top end gets a little bit fuzzy, a little bit less well refined. There's just isn't as much clarity as there probably should be. Again, if a song has got a lot of heavy distortion in it, the top end will kind of lose out a little bit. The big concern I had with purchasing this turntable without listening to it somewhere else was, would it sound good enough that I would use it on a regular basis? My biggest concern was that if I bought something that was too inexpensive and it sounded marginally better than the old techniques I had, it would never see any use. But I'm happy to report that with this setup, if I'm listening to an album and I have it on vinyl, I'll reach for the vinyl album before I listen to it in any other format. So yeah, I guess that's probably the best testament for this turntable that I can give you. Now for the upgrade. Very important if you're buying an entry-level turntable to make sure that you can upgrade it at least a little bit. And with this cartridge, the Ortofon OM cartridge, they make a variety of styluses. Like I said, the default for this cartridge is usually the 5E that they include. This one has the 10, but they make the 20, the 30, and the 40. The price is scales with the number, and it gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. Again, there are limiting factors with any upgrade you do, and from what I've read, the 5E, good stylus, the 10 is better, the 20 is better than the 10, the 30 is better than the 20, and the 40 is top of the line. However, once you get to the 30, the price for that stylus is more than the entire price I paid for the turntable. So we're starting to get a little bit of an imbalance in the performance. I read a review recently that compared the 10, the 20, and the 30. Basically what they said is, yeah, there is an improvement between the 10 and the 20. The 20 they consider to be the first audiophile stylus. The difference between the 20 and the 30 wasn't all that clear cut, and they seem to think that the limiting factor was kind of the cartridge. It just couldn't perform to take advantage of the 30 and definitely not the 40 stylus. So since I probably should be upgrading my stylus anyway, I'd figure I would spend a little bit extra, and I purchased the 20. I've had the stylus for about a week now. I've been kind of waiting till I had a chance to, sit down with the 10 before I took it off. Really, critically listen again to some albums, switch it out with the 20, and see if I could hear a noticeable difference right away. I'll live with it for maybe a week or two, and then report back as to whether or not I can hear a difference. Either way, this cartridge is probably about 2/3 of the way done its lifetime, so had to replace the stylus anyway. So figured I would do a little bit of an upgrade. Now, in theory, the stylus should just slide off. So let's give this a try. Well, that slid off remarkably easy. Now I'll keep the old stylus because I'm pretty sure there's still a little bit of life left in it. Slide the new stylus out of the holder. And very gently slide it onto the cartridge, and I think that's it. We're done. Alright guys, those are my thoughts on my entry-level turntable, the Music Hall 2.2. Changing that stylus went a lot easier than I thought it was going to. I'm going to hang on to my 10 for a little bit, just in case anything happens to the 20. I don't think I have 1,000 hours on this, is what is typically quoted for the lifetime of a stylus. I don't know that I believe that necessarily, but I think this guy's still got quite a bit of life left in it. I listened to a few tracks so far with the 20. Things I noticed right off the bat, the record noise is lower than the 10. The 10 was already very low, the 20 is even lower. And the thing that you notice right away, the bass is a lot deeper and richer when compared to the 10. Is it worth the upgrade? I'm still not 100% sold on it. I like the way it sounds, don't get me wrong, it sounds fantastic, but the 10 was also sounded fantastic. So I'd be happy with any stylus. The 20 is an improvement as I can hear so far, but again, versus the cost, I'm not quite sure. Jury's still out on that. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.